All right, welcome to our board meeting for Blanc Township, Tuesday, March 6th. And Mr. Mansour, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll call the meeting to order and look for an approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
Okay, support. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, going to public comment. We'll open the floor. Is there anybody that'd like to comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our board presentation. And we have Scott Haymeyer, Jack Wheatley. Gentlemen, would you like to address the board?
Get started, okay, thank you. Tonight we're going to talk about a trail. Got an opportunity to put in a trail along with the Dort Highway extension. So we're going to discuss that a little bit and what's needed from the township to make this hopefully a reality. You know, as we work through the Dort Highway extension project, and there's an 11 by 17 that we passed out to everybody because that's one of the slides on here that you can't, it's hard to see. It's hard to see even on 11 by 17, but as we move forward with this Dort Highway extension, you know, it's a great opportunity to put this non-motorized trail alongside of it and help with building out the township's entire non-motorized plan. It's one small segment, but it's a good opportunity to do it along with the Dort Highway extension. And the other thing is Genesee County Metropolitan Planning Organization has shown some interest in this because it's can be a connection to or a part of what's called the Iron Bell Trail. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's one of the governor's projects to get a trail that runs from Belle Isle all the way up to Ironwood. That's why they call it the Iron Bell Trail. In this map that we're showing you right here, kind of shows two different routes for the Iron Bell Trail. One's mostly just hiking and biking, right? And the other one's more bicycles. So the red line on this map obviously is the one that's going through that would be part, you know, we would be part of, to be honest with you. So that's the overall map. And then if we were to window in on Blanc Township, you know, I'll kind of focus a little bit in here, but so that yellow line that runs through the center, comes in from the east side from Atlas Township along Perry Road, and then goes through the city, and then turns and goes up both Dort and then Center Road. That's the portion of the Iron Bell Trail. Now the county would like to do some connections to that, and one of the options is just what we're talking about. On your drawing, on your motorized plan, this green section here is the proposed Dort Highway extension, and the trail would be right along the Dort Highway extension, but the trail would just go from Baldwin to Cook. And the reason for that is because we can't follow Dort Highway across the expressway. It's not economically feasible. So the theory would be is we'd truncate it at Cook, and then in the future we'd go along Cook underneath I-75 for that separation of traffic, and then up Embry Road, and that would connect to this purple line, which is existing trail along Blanc Road, and eventually goes through Bicentennial Park, and can come. And then the county's hope is to continue that on and tie into the Iron Bell Trail. So this has always been a part of your non-motorized plan. You know, we're kind of looking at it as a phased approach, part of your overall non-motorized plan. This non-motorized plan, the original one was adopted in 2006. Ed and I were just talking about it because Ed was part of that group at ERT. And so we're kind of adjusting this trail, the section. We always had a line that ran up the Consumers Energy Corridor, which is right here, and then it goes, you know, straight up here. So we just threw a line in that Consumers Energy Corridor as a placeholder, because that's typically where we can get some help from consumers to put trails in. So now that we know where this is going to go, we've outlined it, and we'll adjust I think on Thursday night you'll have an item to adjust your non-motorized map. And this is also part of your 5-year Parks and Rec plan, too. And if there's any questions along the way, just feel free to holler out or ask the questions.
Mr.
I
Massey?
have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you point to where Emery Road is versus the trail?
Yeah, Embry Road is right along here. You see my cursor?
That's
It's easier to see on here, Joe.
Yeah, if you turn around, you might be able to see it better. So this is Embry right here,
Oh, okay.
this section. Okay, so this will come up, like I say, it'll stop at Cook Road and then go east on Cook Road, across the expressway, and then north on Embry to tie into the existing trail system that you have. And eventually, like I say, the county would like to get that pushed all the way up to connect into the Iron Belt Trail, which is the yellow line up here. Okay? So that's kind of how what the big picture looks like, and this, like we say, is a small phased approach, or small section of it that we have a good opportunity to look for some grant money to do this. And that's what brings us to that next drawing, which is at 11 by 17 that you have in front of you, that I'll pull up here. It's barely visible, so I apologize to anybody that's looking at this from afar, but on this map, this is just the Dort Highway extension, and that's shown in yellow on this map. And then the blue line that's running right alongside of it is the proposed trail. So the trail would be, it'd be off the pavement by 15, 20 feet for the southern, I'll say southern half to 2/3 of it. And then we'll have to bring the trail closer to the road because we're crossing some wetlands right in this area, which is the northwest corner of the Genesis Health Park. So we'll have to bring that in to minimize the impacts on the wetlands. But then as soon as we get through that, we're at Cook Road pretty much. Oops, sorry. Oh, no.
We also have a county drain through there, that we want to share that box cover that we put in for Dort Highway, we can share. We don't have to have a separate crossing of the county.
Yeah,
That's why
exactly.
we get it close.
Try many, why does this do this? So anyway, there you go. In here, and I apologize, I didn't introduce Fred Pavati from the Road Commission. I think everybody knows Fred. He just wanted to make sure to keep me on track, that I wasn't saying anything, spending any more of his money than I usually do. So, and that part of so this brings us to the reason why we're here tonight, because the blue line that's on this map isn't necessarily funded right now. The money that the county asked for, they didn't get everything to do everything they wanted to do. So one of the things it has to give is this trail. So Earl?
So when you go through the wetlands, you're gonna have to put a bridge out there like you did before, or not?
No, it'll be fill through the
Oh, they
wetlands,
can-
which will have to mitigate the wetlands somewhere else on the
Okay,
property.
because usually they won't let you fill it. They
Well, we can fill it, but we have to create
just
more
create one
wetlands.
somewhere else. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so Genesis, we're lucky because Genesis has donated, almost all the right-of-way for both the Dort Highway extension and the trail will fit in that right-of-way. So we're not purchasing right-of-way, which is what we have to do a lot of times or sometimes with trails. So, thanks to Genesis, that we don't have to do that. And we have ample area over here towards the south end of the Dort Highway extension, right where it meets Baldwin Road is where we think we have enough property to mitigate all the wetlands that we're impacting here. So we can take care of it all with what Genesis has provided. Sorry.
Well, we would have to cross a drain. In that case, it would be, I don't know is it a bridge or is it more of
It's
just
more of a box culvert.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, as part of, in and around these wetlands inside of that is the Seaver Drain, which runs through here. And that's where your sanitary sewer runs out also, that will be running through there. So, so we'll just extend the culvert that's going across Dort Highway enough to put the trail over it.
Mr. Massey?
You sort of sound like you're gonna have to reroute something when you say you think.
On which, what did I say, I think? I
You
said,
said, the wetland you were speaking of, that you may have to, you didn't say, I'm just putting words in your mouth, you said, I think.
no, we will have to mitigate and relocate the wetlands.
Oh,
Any impact that we do in the wetlands, I think it's about a 1.5 to 1 ratio, which means we have to create 1.5 times the amount of wetlands that we disturb, or that we fill.
I think you might have said that the area down here, you may think that's
That's
enough.
Oh, yes.
That you were saying, I think that'll be
Yeah.
enough area.
Our calculations right now says there's enough room to do that 1.5 to 1 mitigation in this area. But we haven't detailed that out enough for me to say that, exactly yet. That's why I said I think.
Oh, you haven't blown it up yet?
Yeah, we're close. And then we also have to get it through the DQ.
Oh.
So that's another reason why I said we think, because we haven't run it through them yet. And we're assuming that 1.5 to 1 ratio, because that's what the Genesis Senior Village had to do when they had a mitigation issue there.
Mr. Lemina?
So Jack, while we're talking about this, what's the reason why the township would want to work on this path now as opposed to let Dort Highway be built and then we come back and try to do this? Is there anything that we would then have to go out and seek our own additional permits for wetlands mitigation or any of that stuff?
Yeah, this is a great example of economy of scale here. So by coordinating this with the Dort Highway Extension, we can permit both things at once. There's a lot of benefits that we get by riding on those coattails. And I think, I can't say this for sure, but typically this is what some of these grant areas like to do, is they like to ride on the coattails of some other large project that's going on, which in this case will be the road project. So it's a perfect example of when we can save money overall and add a trail. And Ed and I were just talking about this. This is the time to do trails, because we can, we've got a contractor out there already. There'll be some grading, coordination that'll be going on. We could work the right-of-way issue out with Genesis. A lot of things that cost a lot of money we're able to take care of all at once by doing this at the same time.
It has to be under 2 separate contracts, because LifePad is receiving federal state funds, which has to go through MDOT, whereas Dort Highway Extension is by grants that the Road Commission has received already, but the project is under 100% control of the Road Commission. So we do not have to go through MDOT to advertise and bid and construct the project. These 2 projects really have to be kind of independent of each other, but we have to have a strong coordination cost.
Yeah, because the funding sources will be different. Excuse me, Fred. The grants that we're going to go for are federal grants, like Fred's saying. So the funding sources will be different, which means we have to bid these differently. But the coordination will still be there and critical.
I think I'm going to ask this question correctly. It's a technical question. What is the depth of the valley?
The depth of the what?
As a valley there, if you look at what Dort Highway is going, you said you were going to build it up. What is that?
Oh,
that
okay,
build
so
up?
through here, right through that wetland area, there's a drop off. So as you go south from the old Cook Road, which is right here, there's some houses here, and then behind the houses, it drops off significantly,
Yes.
like 10 feet or something.
I thought it was greater, that's why.
It's 10 to 14 feet, depending
Oh,
on
okay.
what we have to do, so we'll be filling that much. It's a good question. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the funding sources that are available for the trail. One is, it's called the Transportation Alternatives Program, the TAP. Used to be called the Enhancement Program. And that is funded, federally funded. It's administered through the Michigan Department of Transportation. So that's one funding source. We like that funding source because they like to enhance roads with non-motorized stuff. So it seems like a good fit. And then the other reason why we like that source is because it gives more money. It's an opportunity for more money. The issues with that grant source is that they like at least a 30% match. So we get, if the project is, well, we'll look at the money here in a minute, but they like 70%. They like to only give out 70% of what the project costs are, and then they like the local agencies to pay that 30%. So we're trying to come up with every way we can to save the township money. So we're going to try to pay for that 30% match that we have to pay for these TAP funds with another grant source, which is through the Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund. And the good things about that grant source is that it still fits what we're doing. It's recreation-based. Disadvantages is that the max we can get out of that is $300,000. So we're going to ask for the max amount of money. The beauty of this is we can match their grant with the project, the other project grant money. So it's a beautiful thing. So let's talk about the money for a minute here. I've got a slide, and I apologize if this is too small, but the overall cost of the project is in the $690,000, so 700 plus or minus. We put in the maximum amount that is allowed for design and construction engineering just for budgeting purposes. If we were to design it, we wouldn't charge you that much, but we wanted to make sure we maxed out what we can get. So that puts the total project cost $863,000 approximately. That TAP grant is up there showing the funds that we're going to request is 70% of the construction cost, which amounts to, so 70% of the 690, that is. So that's about $483,000 that we'll be asking for in the grant. That means the local agency has to come up with 30%, or approximately $207,000. Okay? So then so we got to come up with this $207,000. How are we going to do that? We're going to use that Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. That's an MDNR TF that says there. We're going to request the whole $300,000, which would, if we are lucky enough to get it, we'll be able to fund that $207,000 match, and then also a portion of the engineering funds. Okay, so that's the goal. And then if it all shakes out like we want, and we get the total amount out of each funding source, we'll have $783,000 of the $863 that we need, which means the township would have to come up with around $80,000. Okay? That's the scenario if we're living clean and we get both grants. And that's the goal. So that's kind of the funding side of it in a nutshell. Are there any questions on that? The other thing that, with those two funds, the TAP grant only funds what's called Act 51 agencies, which you're not, because it's for road jurisdictional agencies, so only people that can apply for that are cities and villages and road commissions and MDOT, who are Act 51 road agencies, road funding agencies.
For the public's information, because I know part of the answer to this, but why are these so expensive? I mean, can't we just, put down gravel or wood chips or something?
Yeah, listen, that's an age-old question. It just seems so simple, doesn't it?
Yeah. Let's just mow a path.
It is federally funded, so you also have to follow the This calls for 8 foot wide
10 foot.
So, 10 foot?
Yeah, you have to follow the ASHTO standards for bike paths.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the construction of what the path will
Yeah,
consist
so
of.
it seems so simple, but it's really like building a new road. You gotta clear everything, you gotta get rid of the bed soils. Yep, you're building a one-lane road. You've gotta have the same cross-section. We have to have a cross-section, meaning the asphalt and the gravel underneath it has to be able to support emergency vehicles. So it's really a one-lane road. And then the funding, like Fred's saying, is pretty in-depth and a lot of bureaucracy and
We're not
you
just
have to
gonna
follow
slap down asphalt over top of dirt.
No, there's a lot that goes into it. And so you're going to have everything from, clearing to
Stump removal.
stump removal, and you may have some undercutting to get rid of bad soils underneath where it's going to go, a lot of gravel. It's just a lot of work. As you know, we did a few years back, we did the Bicentennial Trail, which was 2 miles, and that was $2 million something, so it's just like building a road in the wilderness,
So that pathway is constructed in the same manner that this.
Same exact thing, same funding. And then the other thing with trails is, typically more on like the Bicentennial Park side, it's hard to get equipment down these small, narrow, alleyways. A lot of instances, we're doing one out for Genesee County Parks and Rec right now where they're gonna have to bring asphalt in with the dump truck, 8-yard dump truck or 10-yard dump trucks, instead of the great big trains that you see going down the highway. So it's more labor intensive, it's just like building a road, so that's why they're expensive. Yeah, it's a mile-long trail. This
Usually a
proposed-
road is about $1 million a mile.
Yeah, I think so. Depends on what you're doing with it, but, yeah.
Depends if you got a big box culvert.
That's 2 lanes.
Stuff like that.
Do they? Yeah. And it depends on if you have underground utility, But yeah, it's expensive. There's just a lot of infrastructure involved with it. So, if everything goes right and you guys are okay with this scenario, now we have to talk about what if we don't get the grants too, but, the theory was to ask questions or answer any questions that you might have tonight, and then we'll, if it looks like it's something you want to do, Fred has already gotten a resolution from
Yeah, we just went through and the resolution today.
the
I meant to bring it,
The Board of Road Commissioners had to pass a resolution.
Send that resolution to planning commission because they're doing the application is due tomorrow for the TAP funding.
Okay.
So the County Road Commission is the applicant, because that's what I was saying, they're the Act 51 agency, so when, in townships, it's always the Road Commission that submits these grant applications, which they did for you in the Bicentennial Park project also, but, so they are the one that has to pass the resolution of support for the project, which they've already done, but that doesn't lock you into anything. So, so if that's fine, then we'll bring it back to the March 27th Township Board meeting for final approval.
Yeah, is there any, this is kind of a Dort Highway question along with the pathway, but is there any lighting planned for the extension?
No, not really, I don't think
Only
we,
at those
just at the
three
end.
roundabouts that we're gonna build, we have
That's
to
right,
have
yeah.
some lighting.
Only at the roundabouts? And
So
that'll
it'd be-
be, that'll
Yeah.
just be, what, arms off of a pole, or?
Usually roundabouts, we put in 4 poles, 4 streetlights basically. 4 corners of the roundabouts. People often look at the roundabouts we put up 2 years ago at
Elms?
And Hill, we put up 2 4 streetlights.
Okay, so it'll be identical to pretty much what they have?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Now,
That was recommended.
Right,
Roundabouts should have streetlights.
right.
I do have I brought along this
Okay.
hefty little,
I just wondered about lighting along the rest of it, if we wanted to look at that, but,
I do have a little, kind of a video of what the Dort Highway is gonna look like.
yeah. Is,
I suppose township can do this if they're willing to pay for poles and light poles and
Right.
energy use.
is lighting cheaper to put in when you're building a road than to wait till after?
If you want ornamental lighting, yeah. Is in the underground lighting, which is what you're gonna want. I mean, you're not gonna want, power poles and things up
Right.
there, so, that would be the theory.
Right, yeah.
You don't want a wood pole either, I don't think. Fancy.
Some sort of an ornamental or a mast arm type pole, but, so this is kind of a fast version of it, sorry. Let me get the slower version. This will make you dizzy. Of what the,
Coming
yeah.
up from
Cook
Baldwin
Road right there,
That's
that's,
Cook.
that's the expressway entrance.
Wheatley on his way home.
You're speeding. Chief, get him, issue a ticket.
all right, here's the slower version. So we're standing at standing at Baldwin Road looking north.
That's
This is
the
the
new-
proposed, the senior village center is off to the right there. The hospital's a little further
So
off.
it's going to be one lane on either side?
That's the entrance into the hospital.
Yep,
Right
there's
here,
the dark line on
entrances.
the right is the path, could be the pathway. Here's, we're coming up to Pollock Road right here.
Is there going to be a roundabout or just straight
No.
through?
Just
Straight
right
through
there.
at Pollock.
Okay.
And then, so then as we get closer to this woods coming up, that's where the wetlands are, where we're narrowing things up. So you can see the trail come in close to the road. Road goes to just 2 lanes without a left turn. And it stays this way up to Cook Road, which will be a roundabout. And then the trail's gonna end here at Cook. So that'll drop off, and then we'll go into this roundabout, and then this will be a limited access, so no driveways from here on to the ramps for I-75, which will be roundabouts also at each approach to the bridge.
So it looked like there was a barrier down there by the bike path. Is there a barrier or not a barrier?
That's a great question. Yes, we're gonna have some retaining walls that are gonna hold that earth, to minimize the impact on the wetlands. We're also gonna be putting in retaining walls on each side of the roadway, away from the roadway. But
Away from the roads, but
Yeah.
when the
And
bike
then-
path does get closer to. when
we're
it's-
gonna have a railing.
A railing?
Some sort of it looks like a barrier.
Yeah, it looks
but
like a
it's-
barrier, because that way, because you're right on the, well, it's like 45 miles an hour there, or is that 50 miles an hour?
Which way?
On Dort Highway Extension, what's the speed on
We're
that?
thinking
We'll do it this time.
we're thinking 35.
35?
Probably 45.
Yeah.
35 to 45.
Yeah.
So this is
See,
driving,
right-
this is driving through it, I think, like 50.
Great, but when you get up towards the barrier, it looks like there was a barrier there, so there is gonna be something between the road and the bike path?
There is.
Well, when this was made, I don't know that you really had.
We
to
didn't get
buy-
into that much detail. We just showed that we're gonna put something there
Well,
in
yeah,
between.
Yeah, I know, that's why I'm
We're right in
asking.
here, so in between the roadway and the trail, we're gonna have some sort of a vehicle barrier there.
Right,
Because we gotta get this thing closer to the road, which
Right.
we don't like. So from a safety standpoint. And then we'll have it might be probably just a guardrail, but
Right.
then we'll have another railing that will be on the outside or fencing.
We want a wrought iron or something that looks
Right.
nice. Joe, or Mr.
Yes.
Massey?
How many lanes are there gonna be for Dorr Highway?
It'll be two lanes,
Yeah,
basically,
there's 2 lanes.
with
Really?
the center left turn lane. That's what
That's the road there.
yeah, there it is right there. So this, a lane in each direction, and as we get closer to the south end where we have vacant parcels where there'll be future development, we'll put in a center left turn lane.
We really don't know at this time yet, Jack, because the plan is to build it a 3-lane roadway and then use it as 2 lanes for now until the traffic gets increased. 10 years later, then we can provide the center left turn lane.
Yeah, so we may stripe it.
You see what I'm saying? So
I understand what you
it's
s-
wide now for future use.
I understand what you're saying, but in my mind, correct me here if I'm wrong, I think you're creating a bottleneck if you're only gonna have 2 lanes and the exit lane. I think you're gonna create a bottleneck.
In what, just with traffic?
Yes.
Yeah, well, we did quite an extensive traffic analysis, looking, 20 years into the future. And it looks like we're gonna be at around 9,000 vehicles per day on this section of Dort Highway. And 2 lanes is more than ample to
But the
handle.
reason I'm saying that because at Grand Blanc Road and Dorr Highway now, if you didn't have 2 lanes, I think you would have a bottleneck there. That's just my personal opinion.
At Grand Blanc? Yeah, you're right, at Grand Blanc and Dort is a problem.
That's because Dort Highway's got over, I think, 15,000 cars a day going.
Yes.
In fact, we have plans to widen that at some point.
Yeah, that shows that being a problem area in the future, so the road commission's taking that under consideration now that we've done that traffic study. But this section of Dort Highway that we're gonna build could be good enough for 2 lanes for quite some time.
So you're only thinking of just the hospital personnel,
No, it's looking at the area, the region,
the entire region? Wow.
yeah.
Just remember I said you're
I
gonna
will.
create a bottleneck.
And I think I'll be retired by then.
Ms. Lane, did you have a question? No?
I was going to ask if it went to at least 3 lanes, did you have enough right of way that you?
Yeah, I tell you, Genesis has been great. They're giving us 180 feet of right of way.
Oh, okay.
So a typical 2-lane road is like 66 feet. So we have very ample right-of-way through here. And remember, you're also gonna be putting in your sanitary sewer, you've got a trunk line upgrade that we've already designed and is ready to go. That's gotta replace the existing 18-inch. Yeah, I think Scott does all the work, I don't know why I'm saying. But, so we're gonna replace, there's an existing 18-inch trunk line that runs along that Seaver drain down to service Genesis area, Health Park area. It's almost at capacity now. So we're going to be upgrading that as part of this project to increase that to a 24-inch to help take care of the future development around the Genesis area and some water main looping.
Mr. Guzak?
Yeah, so it's a 2-lane road, but you do have sides on each side. It looks like 5 foot on each side of the road.
Yeah,
on
there'll be
both
some
sides.
shoulders, yes, some paved shoulders, and then
So
in
that's
this,
where you can pick up your extra,
Shoulders on each side.
right. But if you ever did go to 3 lanes,
But we're gonna build a 3-lane hard surface.
oh, okay.
Use it for 2 lanes now, and if the traffic gets increased after 5 or 10.
Okay, so it's gonna be 3 lanes wide all the way down,
And then you have another 6 to 8 foot of shoulder on each side.
on each side, right?
yeah,
Okay.
because if you look at this area here is already slated to be built out. This building, here's the hospital, here's the senior center that they just built. I mean, just built it. I don't even think it's occupied yet.
Not yet.
And then these are 2 future buildings for the senior area. And then south down here, they're looking at maybe some VA senior living or something. And then,
VA living.
so really, we'll need a left turn coming into this site. So we'll have to have a left turn lane southbound, this left turn lane. But we could drop it back to 2 lanes because there's no development that's going to happen in here on either side of the road, okay?
But
So
it's still three wide.
it's still set up. And then likewise, right, okay, so all this area here is all developable, large vacant area that Genesis could develop. So we might have to, there might be some left turners coming in, a driveway or 2 or 3 coming off of this area that we'll want to have a left turn for, at least set up for it in the future. And then really, that's it. That's really all the developable area along Dort Highway, because the rest is wetlands and limited access that'll be coming off of Cook Road. Okay? Any other questions?
Mr. Mansell?
So I have a couple questions. You answered one of them with the construction specifications. When the Dort, this is kind of Dort Highway extension, Dort Highway extension goes through, that's going to be a primary, considered a primary road?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be it's gonna be Genesee County Road Commission jurisdiction.
Can we get that in writing?
Okay, next question. Pretty transparent.
I was waiting for Fred to poke me in the back or something.
In terms, going back to the motorized trail thing, so in many of the instances that we're doing roads, we see that the engineering cost is covered by the county. Is there opportunity for that to happen on this
The Dort Highway extension or the trail?
trail?
Which county are you talking about? Road Commission, there is no opportunity
No.
for us to cover any costs of the non-motorized.
For the engineering, now the trust fund, so the TAP fund, remember there's two funds. The TAP fund doesn't allow engineering costs
Yep,
in the
fine.
grant money, but the trust fund allows 10% of the construction costs.
Okay.
And again, we've got those engineering costs jacked right up there in case is a budget holder, so they'll be less than that.
Okay, so I did kind of a back of the envelope thing, and it looks like it costs about $143 a foot to have the trail, so whatever that turns out to be. Is that comparable to other
Yeah.
non-motorized trails?
Yes.
And does anyone find it a bit ironic that we're building a non-motorized trail that's suitable for motorized emergency vehicles?
Yeah.
Does anyone else find that
Yeah.
somehow?
It is, but in
Ironic.
certain instances, you wouldn't need it here. I mean, but we build it to that because that's what there are maintenance vehicles if you want to plow it. And then a lot of times these things aren't alongside the roadway like the bicentennial, so you gotta be able to get back into those remote areas, so. But yes, it is ironic, you're right.
So if you're on Bicentennial and somebody has an injury or whatever, you need to get an ambulance
Yeah.
back there, they could drive right on the,
Yeah, boardwalk and
Trail is
all,
the idea.
yep. It'll hold up, like 5,000 pounds, we set it
So
up.
that's
or
a
5 tons
safety
and-
aspect that we can,
our police
Lean
or
on.
ambulance, our police probably
But the
have.
fire
one
truck
back there.
wouldn't make it on
No,
Probably not big enough either,
thank you.
there. Oh, it's 10 foot wide.
but there's a bridge there in Bicentennial.
Yeah, that'd be too heavy for that. Other questions?
Thank you for the video so people
Yeah,
can
that's
see
great.
Dort Highway.
Yeah.
So where will the roundabouts be or are proposed for Dort Highway? At Cook Road? And then when you hook up with Dort Highway, right south of Grand Blanc Road?
Yeah, the off and on ramps for, like, here's one here. This is Cook Road,
That's Cook Road, there's.
okay? So that's the Cook Road one. These, aren't quite to scale yet. They'll get detailed out later. And then as you go north, you're coming up to where,
Interchange.
this would be the, so this lane
Southbound
here is
75.
the southbound 75 ramp. And you can see that we're gonna look at putting in what's called a slip ramp where this thing goes right by the roundabout. So people don't have to enter the roundabout to go on to I-75. But if you're going on to I-75 from Dort Highway, you're coming up here, we're forcing you to go around the roundabout and then get on. So you'll merge in here with this other traffic that's coming from southbound Dort Highway. And then this is the off-ramp, the southbound off-ramp, southbound 75 off-ramp that'll come in. And these roundabouts help slow traffic down, because if if you've ever come off of southbound 75 onto Dort Highway, you're hauling pretty fast. And then there's what's called a compound radius or a spiral radius coming off, and it gets tighter the closer you get to the bridge, and it's kind
Got
of
two wheels. as you
scary,
get
yeah.
closer.
It's a little scary. So this slows everything down and then sends you across the bridge at a slower speed. So that's
So there's just 2 roundabouts.
2 roundabouts. This one will be, we think, further away from the expressway than the other ramp here. And then this ramp, we're going to have to add,
And then there's the roundabout
oops,
closer to Grand Blanc Road.
no. This is it. This is the left turn, right now, if you're coming south on Dort Highway to get onto northbound 75, this is that left turn area. We have to
Right.
turn left to get onto
That's,
there.
I was using different words, but that's what I was calling it.
Okay.
South of Grand Blanc Road, you're gonna have a roundabout to get onto southbound I-75.
No,
So you've got a total of 3
northbound,
roundabouts.
yeah. So this, when we spin around here, this shows kind of an aerial view of them both as you're looking. Okay, so here you're going southbound on Dort Highway. You come to the first roundabout. And we had to add on northbound 75 coming off on the Dort. Right now, you can't go left on the Dort. You just go right into Dort Highway. So we have to put that left in here for people that want to use this to go back to Genesis or to get off for some other reason. So that's
Mr.
what that's what this lane is for here.
Have you eliminated that bypass lane, Jack?
No, we talked about that with them, Dad, and I think that we may put 2 lanes around here, but we're gonna keep them,
Same thing on the other side.
we're gonna keep them snugged up. These may change in design a little bit, depending on, how MDOT wants them,
Right.
really.
Mr. Massey?
Yes, getting back to the bottleneck. Did I understand you to say that you're gonna have a roundabout at Cook Road?
Yes.
Yes.
Really?
That'll slow some people down on Cook Road a little bit.
It's creating a bottleneck
Where?
on Cook Road.
Really?
Yes.
Well, it's better than a stop sign.
Yeah. You gotta have something
Cook
for that
Road traffic.
intersection if
A traffic
Dort's gonna
signal.
cross Cook. Dort crossing Cook, you have
Yes,
to have
yes.
something there.
Yes. And that's on the west side of I-75, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I think it'll be good, actually, it'll slow
You
down
think
some of
so?
that traffic on that curve, because right now,
Yeah.
people come around that curve
Yeah.
line, and if there's anything going on, people coming out of McWayne,
Yes.
it's tough for them to try and get out of McWayne and onto Cook, because the cars are coming so fast. I don't know, we'll see, but I'm thinking that it might help, actually, some.
So is it gonna be a 2-car roundabout?
I think it's gonna be one,
Just a 1-car roundabout?
yes.
Yes.
There's one lane each way right now, the road is.
Yeah.
So the normal speed for a roundabout is 10 miles per hour, 5 to 10 miles per hour, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then you'll pave Cook Road when you do that too, right?
You'll get Cook Road paved also as part of this, right? Along with Pollock. Other questions?
I saw him shake his head,
Yeah, I
yes.
think so. I
Well,
think
yeah,
so.
with all that extra, it's all that extra traffic, it's gonna have to, right?
Yeah. But it'll, I mean, you're, Mr. Massey, you're kind of, I mean, there'll be peaks, where things will be going through there, but the nice thing about a roundabout, it's always moving.
You just told me
Yeah.
a few minutes ago, you hope I'm not around. to
No, I
talk
said,
about the
I don't think I'll be around.
Talk about the
For you to
bottleneck.
say, for you to say I told you so. But the data is telling us that this is efficient for what the traffic demands are gonna be.
Well, thank you very much,
Okay, thank you.
Fred, Jack, Scott. Anything else to wrap up before we let them go?
They're gonna be back on March the 27th.
Well, we'll probably be
Yeah.
meeting with them before then, but I think before the board, that's what we'll be looking at.
Well, there'll be a resolution for the trust fund that we have to go through. There's no resolution that we need because the County Road Commission did the resolution for the tap.
And and I appreciate all the work you gentlemen have put in on this. I know our staff has been working hard on this. Dennis Limita's been working hard on it.
Yeah.
This has lots of moving parts to it. We've got letters out seeking letters of support from local communities that are adjacent to us. We have other groups that we're seeking support from within the township, all to help us with getting these grants, getting a favorable result from our application. So I appreciate all the effort you're putting in. I know it's something our residents really want. Yes?
Those letters could be helpful.
Yes.
Because they're basically submitting that application tomorrow. Do you have those letters of support from communities?
Not yet. I didn't think we needed
No,
them yet.
but we have talked to Jacob, he knows it, he left a placeholder in that the letters were coming, we were gonna have them in for tomorrow, but, he's got in that the letters will be received and what date they'll be received by.
Get more points.
Yep.
Yep. So, yeah, we have a date that we need to have them back by, and we've let the groups know what that date is, so we'll be walking over to pick them up if we have to, but I appreciate all the work, and I know this is an issue that our residents really would like to see us work on. When we have a road that's being constructed, it's, you know, the ideal time to, as we heard, the ideal time to work on this. It'd be great to be able to pick, you know, any road out of our community and say, we're doing it over here, but in this case, we're taking advantage of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, which is when the Dort Highway Extension is going to be built. Mr. Lemata?
So what we'll do is on Thursday, you guys are going to be asked to approve the update to the non-motorized trail pathway map for Grand Blanc Township. If the board supports that, then that kind of triggers us to say, okay, we're going to be able to move forward with these grants. We'll post it as a public hearing for the 27th, and we'll have people come in because a public hearing is required for that MNRTF grant. And then we'll pass the resolution required by MNRTF on the day of the 27th. April 1st is our deadline for submission of our grant to the DNR.
We're on a tight time frame with this. Okay. Thank you again very much. Okay, let's move on to our next item, which is to review our township board agenda for our meeting on March 8th. Everyone should have that. We'll be going over our minutes. I don't know if anybody has any comments now, or you want to wait till Thursday for that.
Till Thursday.
We have our consent agenda items. Hopefully everybody will have looked at those. We've got our treasurer's report.
Yep, so I have a couple
Mr.
questions when we get to that. So my typical questions about some of the line items in there. So page 89, there's a $11,000 charge for a Hodson. Hodson's,
How do you spell it?
Hodson.
Hudson?
89,
What department is it under, do you know, or does it say?
second here. Okay, let me blow this up here. Okay, it says, it's a check that was written. Bear with me 1 second. It is under, it just says Bank 592 Chase Bank, Department of Public Works. It says,
Well,
So it's $11,000?
yeah,
Okay, I'll have to pull that invoice and have it for you. I don't remember seeing a HODSON, but,
I did, and I thought it was DPW, but
well, he said
yeah,
it's
DPW.
yeah. If you give whatever
Oh, there it is.
to
It's
Earl, we can check it out and probably have them for Thursday's meeting.
Paul and Shannon J. Hodson, Hodson.
It is a, that
General
is a reimbursement of a bond that we held for, this was a home that had suffered fire damage. As part of the insurance disbursement, they give us money to hold to make sure that the repairs get completed. If the repairs are not completed, we hold back enough if we had to go through demo on the home. This was a court-ordered payment that we refund that now, even though they hadn't quite gotten the repairs done. We've been holding on to it. They appealed to us last year, and I'm sure Mr. Laddie can provide more information on it, but it was a court-ordered refund of a bond payment from an insurance.
You're exactly right. And we held it. They made quite a few improvements to the property, but still hadn't gotten across the finish line. We were in court last week because we wanted to compel them to move forward. And while they did that, we wanted them to no one to occupy the home because there was a family in the house. And so through a series of discussions with the court and with Hodson's, we released that money minus, it was actually $12,000, but it was minus whatever building permit fees were in arrears, and also those anticipated moving forward. And so That money came from an insurance company, it got held by the township for a period of time, and then got released.
Yep, I remember that now.
Okay, then just going down the packet here into the revenue and expenditure report. So I think it's actually, in this packet's on page 94, 95, 94. Okay, so the second line item is current real property tax, and we have a budget of about $5.2 million balance here, revenue. Balance here is about 2.6. So I'm just, that's as of the end of February. And is that budgeted amount for the spring taxes or for the entire year? The $5,192,760.
Page are you on?
That's the entire year of the property taxes that the township will collect.
Okay, so if we're, unless I'm mistaken, are the property taxes split 50-50 between spring and summer?
Not with the township, it's just the winter. Pay township taxes.
Okay, so at the end of our due date here, which you know, everything was due by the 28th, I believe is what we extended it to, we've collected about 50%. Is that correct? I mean, is that normal?
I'd have to check, but anything that's not paid has to go to the county.
50% of our residents don't pay their taxes on time.
No, I would say that this was run through 2/28. We give them until 2/28, so it should have captured anything that came in up until that time, although I would verify that because that
Well,
should
part
have
of it
been
is
picked up.
on 2/28, we won't have everything posted, okay? Because, you know, that's the date that we can last receive a check. However, we can't get it all in one day, so there's gonna be more than that we had to post effective back to the 28th, because some of it came in the mail, and if it comes in the mail,
I get the point. Okay, I was just checking to see if that.
absolutely,
That's a good question.
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
curious to know
So
what the percentage is.
I'm curious, I guess at the end of this month, the March run, we should see where we're really at net of all this posting time back.
Yeah, I can
this date
check,
and thing.
yeah, I can check to see how much we've actually got, I'll
Yeah.
just check.
Okay,
Maybe we can even look at what last year we had at the same time.
right.
And
If
see
it's
if we're
co-
ahead of schedule or behind.
Or behind. And then I guess the only other question that I have is, in all the pages here, the 30 pages of the various revenues and expenses, is there anything here that is, any spend or revenue that's really outside of the normal bracket? In terms of any significant spend ahead or revenue that we were expected to receive that we're behind?
I don't think there's been anything. There's not been any anomalies.
Okay. Okay, thank
Done a
you.
little bit more snow plowing this year than.
Snow
than
plowing
usual.
was excessive. Obviously, the report
Right.
that I gave at the last meeting,
Right.
And the salt.
which would put us probably up around the 90th percentile on where we're at for our budget. But outside of that, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we'll get through the approval of the treasurer's report, and we'll get some additional information from Mr. Guzak. We've got in our packet the minutes from the various boards, which I thought was very helpful to read through those and see what's going on with the various commissions that we're involved with. Item C, the board will consider a motion to approve, this is under the consent agreement, township contribution of $25,000 to repair 10 catch basins throughout Grand Blanc Township subdivisions for $2,500 each. And this is basically a match, I believe, from the county road commission. So is it the road commission or the drain commission?
Road
Road
commission.
commission. So we match their $2,500 and replace those. So we're doing 10 of them. Is that pretty much 10 a year that we do, Jeff? Or? Okay. All right. Okay. Item D, the board will consider a motion to waive the competitive bidding requirement due to the use of bulk bidding process through Oakland County and approve the purchase of a 2018 Chevrolet Silverado for $30,013 from Berger Chevrolet of Grand Rapids. Basically, that goes through the bid process that we participate in.
Can I ask a
Yes.
question about that?
Sure.
Did I see on here that it was let me see. We're replacing an 11-year-old vehicle with 40,000 miles on it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So if you take a look at that, that's like, and divided by the cost of it, it's like 75 cents a mile for that truck. We're spending 30 grand for a truck that's 11 years old that we put 40,000 miles on. Like, what's it, 4,000 miles a year? So it seems to me that that we ought to be able to find a way to get this need handled for like something less than 75 cents a mile.
Well,
Sure.
we didn't pay 30,000.
We didn't, yeah, I would say, we didn't pay $30,000 for that
The
truck in
original.
2000.
No, but if we use the $30,000 truck that we're going to buy now at the same rate that we used the previous one.
And it won't be, the only thing I could say is the truck that we're replacing has a snowplow on it. But
Okay.
you can pretty much double the wear and tear on that vehicle, even with the lower mileage. The truck that we're purchasing is not gonna have a snowplow. So it probably will be around longer than the 10 years that we replace our snowplow trucks.
It just seems to me that, having a truck for 4,000 miles a year, it seems like it's kind of a,
Sure,
No.
yeah, and that's what we see
it's like a summer car.
in municipalities, that's what we see. That we always have lower miles on our vehicles.
Because we're not taking them outside of the
They
municipality.
never leave
Right.
outside of a 36 square mile area.
But they get, the way these trucks work, they have more wear and tear on them.
Okay.
They're just worked harder than the average person would.
I mean, it just seems to me if I was.
Understandable,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Our police vehicles probably end up having a lot more miles.
They
on them,
do,
obviously.
substantially, because they just go in circles all the time. I mean, they're doing work while they're going in circles, but yes, they have substantially more miles on, but they also receive service in half the time that our trucks receive service also, so
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure how many years we keep a police vehicle, but,
We have a lot more service requirements on them, is what you're saying,
correct,
so the cost.
yes. On all these vehicles, there's a lot more service requirements.
And it depends on the vehicle. I mean, the one that we sold last year was a Silverado. It was probably a 2005 maybe. And I think the bidding went up to $9,000 when we sold
Correct.
it. It went considerably higher than we ever anticipated it to
Right.
go for. They've been serviced well. The maintenance is done every 3,000 miles or more, or less. And the track record speaks for itself. But you can jump on govdeals.com yourself and look, and you'll see that this is not unusual from a municipality. If you look at the mileage on the municipalities that are got trucks out for sale, they are low miles, but I don't want to say they're hard miles, but they're used like a tool.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sears. Next item on the agenda, under future positioning, board will consider approval of the update of the non-motorized trail map. We talked a little bit about that already. I don't know if we have anything right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr.
Go ahead.
Okay, so,
Mr. Mansur?
so we have a number of non-motorized trails that we're kind of thinking
Correct.
about. Do we have some way to prioritize those? I
Well-
mean, we're jumping on this one now because it kind of makes sense and, get it done, but is there a prioritization on those trails?
Well, from my knowledge of it, we really have never had the funding to look at having any of them done. So as far as prioritizing, it's been kind of, if we have, in my short time here, it's been where the funding is available. So if the funding is available for the Iron Bell and for the Dort Highway, those are the two that we've started pursuing. But those are going to take us through our term to just get those on the books as far as funding. I don't know, Mr. Lima, do you have any thoughts
The
on
last
that?
time that the board approved the non-motorized trails plan was 2006. That was obviously before the recession. There was a plan and a push back then to greatly expand non-motorized pathways, and it had a lot to do with, a lot of the studies were landmark coming out of Michigan State University, talking about sense of place and creating that sense of place and how you were going to track the millennials and the next gen folks to want to locate in your community, the entrepreneurs and all that. So there's a huge push everywhere about you really have to expand non-motorized trails. These people want to have multimodal transportation throughout their community. And so there was more of a plan back then, but the recession hit and that non-motorized trail plan screeched to a halt for obvious reasons through all these years. We talked about it briefly during that Parks and Recreation Master Plan update and asked them to make sure that they included that in there, and that was included in the appendix. But then when these opportunities came up to look for the TAP grant and the MNRTF grant, we realized that we needed to make sure those were in there. Now, from a prioritization standpoint, clearly because this is available and needs to happen now, we looked at this when we were putting this together as kind of phase one is the Dort Highway Trail. Phase two would be that connection, which would be the next TAP grant we would apply for to take that from the intersection of Cook and take it Cook to Embry to connect at Grand Blanc. And then after that, we've also got the Iron Bell Trail that the state's looking to make more dollars available, more grant funds available for that. So we kind of have those as the phase 1, 2, 3 process. And then we're going to have to consider expanding where we want to go next because while that's a, kind of a point to point, we could go from Hill Road to Baldwin Road, but where will you go and how will you tie it in somewhere else? I mean, long-range planning, I think that's a good question for the board to where you guys would like to go next. We want to move it down Baldwin to the Tech Village area, for example, and intertie it from Tech Village back up along Saginaw to downtown, so you'd actually have like a loop of trails. I think would be a very worthwhile goal, but that's where that prioritization is going to depend entirely on the 7 folks who are sitting in your seats.
And I think part of it is where the funding is available. Certain funds are available for certain types of projects. So the funding that we're going after for the Iron Bell, that's a high priority for the state right now. So now is the time to go after the money they want. We're a linchpin to them completing that trail because we have, I don't know, Burton is applying for money. Atlas Township has already been awarded money and are working on theirs, so we're going to be the holdout. So the state sees us as a priority for that Iron Bell. So now is the time to strike, those grant dollars. There may be other opportunities down the road that will determine which way we go in terms of where the funding's available. Mr. Guzak?
Yeah, I know on some of the sidewalks that are being built, they're usually built when they're doing the construction on the road, because on Saginaw Road, right here,
Sure.
we had some new construction in, so then you'd see a lot of curb cuts at the intersections dropped in and short pathways, even on Dort Highway, between Dort Highway and Saginaw Street, there's a sidewalk that went in there because they did all that construction. So normally, when we put sidewalks in, we're always tied in, just like we're tying in with the Dort Highway extension, we're tying in with the other construction, and that's usually the only time we have expanded it, except for specific grants.
The Iron Bell Trail, looking at the plans, it's actually it goes up Dort Highway and then it gets on to Consumers Energy and actually goes through some farm fields. And if it were to be completed, and actually very picturesque where it would head up to Burton. So I think it would be a great asset to our community. So. Anything else on that?
Mr. Chair, I have
Yeah,
a
Mr.
question.
Massey.
When do we anticipate actually paying out the money?
So this will kind of be going hand in hand along with the Dort Highway extension. We'll also be working on water and sewer. Mains will be extended through there. And then we're going to be doing this pathway at the same time if it all got approved. So if they're going to start the construction in 2019 and complete it in 2020, then that would be when we were liable for the funds. It would be when our actual project starts to go. So I would anticipate that we maybe would start to pay in 2019 and finalize the project in 2020.
Okay. Moving on to the next issue under operational issues. the board will consider a resolution to adopt millage ballot language for the purposes of providing fire protection equipment and services as follows. And Mr. Laddie, would you like to discuss this portion?
Sure, what we need to do is, if this millage language is acceptable to us, we want to adopt this resolution, and we're going to forward it to the county for placement on the ballot for August 7th. And I think, Madam Clerk, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the deadline to submit language for the August election is in May. So we're going to do this a little bit early, but we want to see if there's any comments or feedback from the county. So we put it in resolution form, and if it looks acceptable to you, then Thursday night you'll consider adopting that, and that will be your ballot language.
Mr. Chair,
Okay. Yes, Mr. Massey?
question. Why shouldn't we not accept this?
I don't think there's any reason in the world not to accept it. Unless there's some change in direction, but you guys have been pretty clear moving forward that this is what's required of you to be able to maintain the level of services that you currently have. And I think at this point, this is our last bit of legislation before we'll let the voters decide in August.
Okay. Ms. Lane?
As a reminder, we talked about it at executive session. We'll also still have to approve ballot language for mosquito control this year because we can't levy it on the winter taxes unless it gets approved, so
We'll look at
we'll
that
have
in
to
April,
follow
probably.
that one up.
Our goal is to look at that next month. Okay, next on the agenda will be, the board will consider a recommendation of superintendent to approve the hiring of Mr. Thomas James and Mr. Brian All to fill vacant positions within the DPW service technicians. And I know we've talked a little bit about this issue of the hiring and what our policy is in terms of what the superintendent's allowed. And it's been our practice, I think, over the past several years that if the positions are in the budget, that we've allowed our superintendent to fill those positions. Mr. Lehman, can you comment on some of your research with that and where we're at with discussing a future policy maybe?
Sure, we've had conversations, and Supervisor Bennett and David Laddie and myself have met and looked through what we have right now. And basically, our existing policy is only addressed in my original employment agreement that highlighted the fact that I was given the role of a personnel director. It's also in our employment manual that all the personnel director and personnel decisions will be made by and has been bestowed upon the township superintendent. But we also ran this through Labor Council after our meeting, and we got some information back from Aaron Graves from Bodman. And with the statutes, the Charter Township Act gives the authority to the board to appoint fire chief or police chief and any personnel that they may deem necessary for moving forward. So it's of the opinion of Mr. Laddie, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but as well as Aaron Graves, that the board should make the appointments for police or fire personnel. All the rest, there's no need. Any other employee would just run through the normal personnel director's position. So these wouldn't necessarily have had to come out to the board and ask for permission to fill them. But what we need to do is we need to solidify the policy on how it's going to move forward. Obviously, our biggest concerns had to do with, and especially in the police department, the time from when we initially start recruiting and start interviews and to when we can actually complete it is a lengthy process. A lot due to our standards and to the thoroughness of our background checks and our interviewing practices. But what will happen, what our concerns were, is we lose candidates, good candidates, between the first interview and the second interview, for example. And then a bigger concern after that is we start a background check, we've selected them, we start the background check, Those can take up to 4 weeks to complete because it is very thorough. Then we get through the background check and drug screening, and we're prepared to offer them the position. We offered a contingent offer. Before we don't really want to bring somebody's name to the board and ask you to authorize me to execute or to move forward with hiring that person, because it creates the liability for the person who suddenly has their name put out in public, and then a month later we come back and say, well, unfortunately, they didn't pass, some portion of the background check, and so we're trying to figure out how we're going to put the policy together that will keep us from having a 5 or 6 month lag time between initial interviews and actually being able to bring somebody on board, but to also make sure that legally we're doing what we need to do. And one of the recommendations from Labor Council was to just have the board approve the supervisor's recommendation for hiring without necessarily putting the person's name in or giving me authority to hire based upon a recommendation. I don't know that that is the appropriate way yet. We're still kind of working through that. We don't have a clear definitive policy to present to you yet. But I think that between Scott, Aaron Graves from Bodman, and David, that the 4 of us can certainly get a policy together sometime in the next 30 days and have that come before the board. From my standpoint as personnel director, but more as a township superintendent, I need policy so I know there's no gray areas. I need to know where you guys want to be, so that I can act accordingly. I do not want to be caught in a gray area where somebody's accusing me of not following policy. And better yet, we've got statutes that speak specifically to law enforcement and fire service that we definitely want to address appropriately.
And I think, too, Mr. Limita, that I want to make sure that, we've put you in charge of developing a team here that can get the job done, and I want to make sure that you're able to be able to find team members without losing them because the process is so arduous and lengthy. And then, like you said, we bring people before their name before the public, and then for some reason we can't prove them. People are wondering, well, what happened to this candidate? So I think we need to streamline it and have a clear policy also for your sake and ours. So we'll work on that over the next month, and I think we can come up with something.
And the 2 that are before you will be before you on Thursday. Mr. James currently works for us in a part-time position and has for several months. And the other candidate, it would be new to us. And because we are in the transition of trying to decide where the policy was, I put him on here because I'm not sure where we're going to land on policy, but we would like the board's approval to fill these positions. They were created. One has always been in there that hadn't been filled, and we're prepared to fill that position now. The other one is from the promotion of a DPW service technician who accepted the promotion to the assistant DPW director that created an opening.
And these were approved in our budget, it's Ms. Lane?
To the board, Brian Alp worked here 2008 to about 2010, and then he went out on his own, but he was an excellent, multifaceted, quality person all during that time. And I know I and several of the other board members at that time were very disappointed that he left, but he was wanting to go out on his own, so I'm glad that he's back.
Okay. Anything else on that item?
But
Mr. Massey? Yes.
for clarification, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask the question.
Sure.
To me, I don't think the board should get involved in looking at hiring people because when you start, the board start getting into that, and I think the superintendent explained it very thoroughly, and that you start learning too much about an individual, and then sometimes that information that we learn as a board can be held against that individual down the road. So I wouldn't want to see anything beyond what we're currently doing. Yes, upgrade the policy. Okay.
There's a couple of concerns with the policy, Trustee Massey. One would be, in fact, it was made very clear from Labor Council that they we don't want the board interviewing candidates from the board table. You wanna, we closely control the format. Right now, all of our interviews are done by panel style. The questions are all put together, exactly what's gonna be asked. We ask them the same questions, so that there's no bias, it's all fair, and every candidate gets asked the exact same question. So part of the, just good personnel management and good public policy is that we do that. And Labor Council, in fact, said he would not make the recommendation that the board would be involved in type of interviews. The only time that would occur is when you're replacing my position, specifically, but outside of that, it would not be done in that public forum with the full board. But still a lot of questions on the policy, and I think whatever happens, we'll come up with a very clean and clear policy on how we're gonna move forward. Primarily, it looks like, and again, it's unique to township governments, with the thing about the emergency service personnel, police and fire. But I think that we can create a policy that does that, and it's just bringing to the board. It's more about working out the timing and the logistics at this point. I don't want to bring and make a recommendation to you for an individual, for a new police officer or a new firefighter's role, and put their name in there on a contingent offer based upon the clearance of the background checks, like I said, because then there's a pitfall where we've just exposed somebody and 30 days later we say that individual was rejected because they didn't pass the background check. We don't want to be in the business of hurting anyone's reputation. So probably what'll happen, the delay comes in, I'll wait till the background check is done. It increases the expense. We just start doing background checks on people who are in the second interview process who made that first cut, but maybe that would help us speed the process along, that we already start doing the background checks on those individuals. Certainly it'll add some expense and some workload to the Township Police Department who do the background checks for us. But I think it's important that we, like I said, work it out one way or the other. We want to make sure we're following the law in regards to the Charter Township Act, and we also want to make sure that we're following state and federal personnel laws.
And we want to avoid the politicization, I guess, of hiring and letting people go too, because, you know, we can all imagine what that looks like if the board gets into whether or not somebody gets hired or doesn't get hired or gets let go. And, you know, that's partly what we've hired you to do, is to be our personnel director, have somebody on staff to help you with that. Ms. Lane?
I think that the four of you that are putting together a policy are putting together a policy because state law says the township board hires and fires. And you're creating a basic policy to be followed so that we are meeting that state statute.
Well, it's actually it's a mixture of both. There are certain positions that require board approval for hiring. There are certain positions that don't. And so what we want to do is we want to separate those out, and we want to make sure we've got the process as streamlined as we can for the board and also for the applicants. And so while that's certainly true with emergency personnel, police, fire, assessor, and superintendent, that's not necessarily the case with other employees, although we have another category of employees which are people with individual contracts, and so we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna streamline that process too. But what we'll bring to you is a category of employees, a proposed method of moving forward, and it'll be a hybrid, really, I think, what we have now. And it's not, the goal is not to change really what we have now, because it's working pretty good. We just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and we've got the process, got the I's dotted and the T's crossed.
Exactly.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question. You raised an interesting thought, Attorney. At the time we were putting this together, shouldn't we consider the others that may need to be updated, policies?
Well, certainly from an employment standpoint, we should do that. And I think Mr. Lehman has got kind of a long-term schedule for policy development and refinement. This issue, though, this will be a pretty comprehensive policy, because it also, I think, will probably take into effect or take into consideration part-time employees that had just been able to be hired at the discretion of department heads. Also, unusual employees from a deputy standpoint for the clerk and treasurer. So this is a pretty big policy. And let's see how we do on this one, I guess, before we set up the next one. I think it'll be comprehensive, and it'll be something that everyone likes and can move forward with.
Okay. So, Mr. Massey?
So I think I heard, because I thought that third or fourth class of employee is the ones you just mentioned, deputy treasurer, deputy clerk, which would have different selection, I won't say criteria, but different selection, who gets to decide.
Right.
And that would be comprehended, so it'd all be in the same policy.
That's our goal, to get it all in one spot.
I think one of the things from a consistency standpoint, including for part-time, seasonal, temporary employees, since I came on board, we've made a requirement where we put everybody through at least for some it's more of a comprehensive background check, some is a little bit more briefer. We run a criminal lien and credit check before we bring anybody on board. When we're bringing on a full-time employee, it becomes much more comprehensive, and it goes back in and dives in. We're bringing on a police officer. It's a much more comprehensive background exam. And I think from my standpoint, we just need to spell it out in policy so that everybody knows exactly how we approach it, and then we can follow policy. And I think once we get that together, I think the board will see that it's good to have it spelled out, because then we know that everybody's following policy exactly like they should.
Well, and we owe it to you as our sole employee to have that cleared up. We shouldn't leave you hanging in the wind, not certain as to, if you have one board member saying, hey, you're supposed to bring that to the board, and others are saying, no, you don't have to. We need that cleared up for your sake.
Well, on the board's sake too. Everybody's got to be on the same page.
Right. Yep. So, I just wanted to let the public know it isn't just our superintendent asking for that, it's us as well. So, okay, next item on the agenda would be item C. The board will consider a motion to approve the renewal of the uniform video service local franchise agreement with AT&T. Mr. Limita or
The
Mr.
last
Reddy?
time the board saw one of these was in 2016, when we had the exact same video service local franchise agreement come before you from Comcast. It's a non-exclusive agreement. The questions that you get asked are the federal law cap of the franchise fees are 5%, that is the max, as well as the PEG fees at the 0.5%, which is also max. AT&T, when they provided this for our signature and to return to them, had the written in already with Comcast. They left it blank in case we wanted to reduce those fees for some reason. AT&T already filled them into the max before they sent it to us and just asked us for a renewal. It's a standard agreement. It's the exact same agreement we saw last time, and I don't. It's good for 10 years, and I think it's just one of those things where it's more of a housekeeping issue at this point, unless there was some reason that the board wanted to lower the amount that AT&T was providing in those franchise fees or the PEG fees.
Questions or concerns?
Yes, I have a
Okay.
question. I didn't quite understand what you meant, Superintendent, at the end when you said if we thought otherwise to lower those fees.
So even though they filled in the agreement saying that the franchise fees will be 5% that you're going to collect from their customer base, as well as the 0.5%, which is the PEG fees, the public education government fees that can be used for transparent broadcast of our meetings, like much what we did with the equipment upgrades here, so that we can make our YouTube and post them on our things. We can use that money for that. You can collect up to 5% franchise fees. You can collect up to 0.5% in PEG fees. But really, it's up to, I mean, it's at the board's discretion where they want to go. I would think that you'd want to be consistent, and I'm assuming AT&T felt that as well, because they maxed them out when they sent them in, and I believe it's pretty much a standard operating procedure.
No, you're right. In the community, all the communities I represent, everyone's at 5. In Davidson, they had some discussion about the possible merits of lowering that. And it came down to an analysis of whether or not the board members felt that any reduction in the franchise fee would be passed on to the customers. And after a lot of back and forth with a company not AT&T, it was decided to just keep it a uniform flat 5% that mimics almost everything else in the county, rather than to try to attempt some sort of effort to reduce a fee at the expense of your other franchisees. And it just turned out to be, the analysis turned out to be not worth it, frankly.
Okay. The next item, the board will consider a motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent for merit increases for select employees.
Superintendent Bennett, I've got, have completed all of the performance evaluations for 2017 for all of our independent agreement employees. As the board is no doubt well aware, we have signed several of those agreements, re-signed them at the end of last year, and made some equity adjustments in those. But what we have before you, and we've got a couple of renegotiations on some contracts or requests for renegotiations. So in order to get into those, I'm going to ask the board to consider this evening an executive session that would allow me to present the renegotiation for some of our employees in regards to this, and then we can provide that slate. Then depending on how those go from an executive session, the board's direction to me, I'll have the opportunity to talk with employees tomorrow, and then we'll be able to present the facts of the case on Thursday evening for the full board to consider.
So you're requesting an executive session, and then Mr. Laddie, I think we had another item as well.
We do, we want to discuss a potential DPW project with the board.
Okay, is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved. Support.
Motion, support, any discussion?
I have a discussion point, just kind of wrap back around to this. On item B, this whole recommendation thing, what is the housekeeping on consider a recommendation? I mean, it's not a motion, it's not a resolution, I mean, what?
And which one?
It would be in the form of a motion.
Okay, so we'll amend it to say a motion.
Or under operational issues, item B?
B, yeah.
Board will consider the recommendation.
Well, was
Motion to approve the recommendation of the superintendent regarding hiring or whatever.
Consider a motion. Yeah, you would have to make a motion on Thursday to do that, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, that was my discussion, thank you.
Okay, there's been a motion seconded. Ms. Lane, you want to ask for the,
Mr. Thomas and Mr. Kent are absent, so Mr. Massey,
Yes.
Mr. Guzak,
Yes.
Mr. Mansour,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Bennett.
yes. Okay, we'll see everybody in the conference room.
And that's at 8:25.